With Marvel's latest event, Secret Empire, coming out very soon, and it's supposedly being the last event for over a year, which we can all hope at this point, it's about time this snarky, scorned Marvel fanboy finally sat down and decided my personal list of the worst events in Marvel's history. Will this list be divisive? More than likely, but hey, it's my opinion. Also, this is a list of events, things like Heroes Reborn or One More Day, because they're a new line launch and a storyline respectively. So without further ado, I'm the Comic Archivist, and be warned, massive spoilers are massive. With that said, let's get started. Number 5. Civil War. When the government finally came after the superhero community, Captain America stood firm against the Superhero Registration Act as they started to arrest those that didn't sign up. And that leads into Tony Stark, who's been publicly Iron Man for a while at this point, siding with the government. On paper, this was a great idea for a comic, expanding on the premise that the XMen have been facing for a very long time, and make it a super event that will forever change Marvel. Even has a pretty good movie based on the premise. So why did this make it onto the list? Well, because while on paper this all sounds great, in context, it was really bad. Tony Stark and Reed Richards basically go supervillain, Spider-Man flip-flops more than a footwear of the same name, the Registration Act has no clear definition, but that's what happens when you have over 100 comics for a whole event. Some of those tie-ins are actually integral to the plot going forward. But the biggest reason that this was such a bad event, it set the trend for most of the events that followed it, with a major death to start things off. The death in this one is Black Goliath, and yes, most of you have no idea who that is, nor should you really care about who he is. That's why this is low on my list, but definitely should still be on this list. Is it the worst thing on the planet? No. Some of the tie-ins are actually pretty good, and there are definitely some solid moments that have become iconic, but all those parts together, it's just not good. Number 4. Avengers vs. X-Men. This event officially jumped the shark for, well, probably all of Marvel's properties. It's no secret that Ike Perlmutter hates basically every Marvel property not owned by Marvel Studios, and after the Disney buyout of 2010, it was never more prevalent than in their booking decision for Avengers vs. X-Men. AVX was the culmination of basically all the buzz trying to get the Avengers over the X-Men, who at the time was still one of the most popular comics out from Marvel. So why does this suck? The plot was total bullplop, with Cyclops going full retard because the Phoenix Force was on its way to Earth. And basically, it's the Avengers fighting the X-Men, with only the loosest strands making it a sensible fight. You also have a billion Avengers, including the Fantastic Four, and other teams affiliated with the Avengers, facing off against, what, 20 mutants at this point? Not cool, bruh. Then you have specifics in it, like Iron Man going, hey, let's kill the Phoenix Force, Scarlet Witch coming in to change reality towards the end, and totally failing to use Hope to the potential she was being booked as. The biggest failing of this, though, is that you have a platoon of comic veterans working on this, with names like Matt Fraction, Ed Brubaker, and Brian Michael Bendis, who is on this list a couple times, all going in on it. It feels like they wrote this at the same time but at different bars after happy hour. But I will give the comics 2 props. The art isn't bad, and the first couple issues have a way over-the-top narration that kind of makes it hilarious. Number 3. Secret Invasion or Fear Itself. This is a twofer because I can't figure out which is worse. On one hand, Secret Invasion has a fantastic idea. Skrulls have been infiltrating the superhero community in all of its branches over the last couple years. And again, the marketing for this was great. Look at this ad, just really look at it. The whole embrace change angle works well, even if it does mean very little when in the actual story, there's no need to embrace change. The plot was simple, but you had a built-in way to go, yeah, this character did something way out of character last year because he was a Skrull the whole time. But nope, especially with this right after Civil War and fans being kind of divided on it. You had easy answers and easy outs, but it got Bendis to high hell. Pacing problems, Bendis not keeping his own continuity, even though some of the tie-ins were good. It was not only the worst case of potential being squandered, the only good thing that came out of this was the Dark Reign status quo. But on the other hand, we have Fear Itself. Again, interesting build-up for someone like me, who wasn't really reading the Avengers or Thor books at the time. Again, the ads here this time literally goes, here's what our heroes fear, here's what we're going with. Cap losing faith, Spider-Man fearing tomorrow, or One More Day since this was 2011 with well after the whole debacle of Spidey's continuity, but Cyclops becoming the new Magneto. A striking notion since Cyclops was drawing further into being a more militant mindset post-M Day and was really reaching this point, which was actually a very good character arc throughout until AVX. Maybe that was way too long on my list. But seriously, Matt Fraction makes 7 super bosses so Tony can make his own hammers, and hey, we get redesigns just to have fights, and then it just sort of ends, as though Fraction thought he had an extra issue or something. It has zero impact on the world, with even the big death in it just being a robot version of Thor, so Thor can come back the next issue. So I couldn't choose between the two, so they're both number 3. Number 2. Axis. Originally, Inhumans vs. X-Men was going to take this spot, but I realized that I couldn't look at that without seeing how it affects current comics. And since it just ended, I'll let it simmer for a little bit. It was stupid, pointless hero v hero book that ended with literally going, "Oh, you should have just asked," and now everything's better. And even in the Royals comic that just came out, they swept it all away by going, "As soon as Medusa found out that the Terrigen was killing mutants, she destroyed it," which literally means that all of that was not only stupid, but pointless. But I have other vids where I talk about that, or will in due time. But no, this spot is for a book I call Sixus. Just look at the font. Sure, it's not as funny as Gay for Justice, but it's still a sad font. Why is this number 2 on my list though? Well, for starters, it's Rick frickin' Remender failing at every point. This was an assistant editor edition comic released as a real thing. No one else remembers those? Damn. Red Skull gets the Xavier's brain and forms Red Onslaught, and eventually Scarlet Witch saves the day by waving her hands and switching everyone's alliances. Then the story is just heroes doing what they do, just being more dicky about it, and then it sorta just ends. Granted, Secret Wars happened in 2015, so we don't know how the inverted villains would be for the most part after that. But when you get someone like Rick Remender, not even needing to co-author this book, not even going half-assed, but totally no-assed to make something so ultimately poorly written, but the art also does no favors to this, as it's busy and downright ugly at some points. Before we get to number 1, here's a couple honorable mentions. Age of Ultron banked on time travel and evil robots to make random deaths and try to be "oh my god," but left me shaking my head. It almost feels like they made this event solely because they needed a cool name like Age of Ultron, especially since I think 6 months later, Whedon said that, oh yeah, Avengers 2 is going to be called Age of Ultron, so I think that's why it exists. Infinity and House of M both had their biggest problem being that you needed to read key tie-ins to get the full plot, but Infinity by itself absolutely needed to be read alongside Avengers and New Avengers to make sense of what was going on. Spider Island was almost comical to a point, even while trying to say, so much of Manhattan just got turned into Spider-Persons. We can all be Spider-Man now. And a couple Avengers even getting spider powers, which was totes hilarious, yo. The only reason this didn't make it even on my list is because this had some really good moments between Peter and MJ that I, as a fan of Spider-Man when he was married to MJ, liked. Number 1. Civil War 2. This event kicked Marvel square in the bank. Every single problem that I brought up with every other book on this list culminates here. Everything you can do wrong with an event happened in this book. The story was garbage, relying on everyone being a moron and having no recollection of the past. Carol Danvers goes kind of legitimately insane. The death they use in this is random and kind of nonsensical to push Carol, but not Tony. It shipped late, and the tie-ins, oh god, the tie-ins. They put a halt to basically all forward momentum in most comics, save for a couple books that did only skirt the event to move forward, like the Hercules book Becoming Gods of War, or the Enemy of the State 2 storyline from All New Wolverine. This event was so bad and got literally everything wrong that it dropped Marvel's sales across the board for retailers, breaking the retail spec boom that they had been building up with their other marketing gimmicks. Everyone save for comic book resources, because when have they ever been actually talking about the comics they tell people to read, gave it negative reviews. Even those that are generally nice to Marvel gave it 5s and 6 in their grading scale because there was no way to hide how piss poor this was. Surprisingly, there was a lot of Bendis on this list, but I think he keeps being hired since he's part of the cabal of evil creators that Perlmutter has on his committee. Don't fact check that though. And that's our list. Do you think that you have an even better, or worse rather, comic that should have been on this list instead? Let us know in the comments below. And you can follow me on Twitter, on Facebook, and we also have a Patreon, and with your help, we can actually make the channel have real editing. And as always, stay golden, Inklings.